When picking between the Panasonic Z95B and the LG G5, there's a few things to keep in mind with these two TVs. They have a lot of similarities and they're using the same panel, but there is some differences that are really important to take note of. And hopefully in this comparison, you'll get an idea of all of those things, plus which one is going to suit you better at the end of the day. One thing is clear, both of these TVs are fantastic. And in this comparison, we're really going to be splitting hairs with the differences that we're going to see with the Z95B and the G5. At the time of filming, the LG G5 is going to be cheaper than the Z95B, and that's a trend that I've seen throughout the whole entire year. And I'm pretty sure it's going to continue throughout Black Friday as well. LG just seems to be more aggressive with their sales compared to Panasonic. Value may play a part into your decision-making process with these two TVs. And on the topic of value, if you value a 5-year panel warranty, then LG G5 is going to be the only one that's going to offer you that with the TV purchase. Where with other TVs, you're going to have to purchase a separate warranty if you want support for 5 years for your panel. In terms of where you can buy the Panasonic Z95B, currently the only place you can really get it is on Amazon.com or through mom and pop retailers like Value Electronics. So if you have a local retailer, I would definitely say support them if you have the option to do so. But if you don't have the option to do so, check out Amazon.com for the Z95B, and the G5 is going to be sold everywhere that sells TVs. And if you guys are interested in these two TVs, I will have the links for both of them in the description below. These are going to be affiliate links and I will get a small portion of the sale if you guys purchase from that link. So please consider doing that when purchasing your next TV. Thank you guys so much for your support. I'm going to start off with some differences with the design because I think this is really important, and then we're going to lead into picture quality and gaming differences. But first, let's start with the design and talk about the actual stand situation that we have with both of these TVs. With the LG G5, currently in the US, there is no model available with a stand in the box. It only comes with a wall mount in the box. And this is going to be the case for all sizes across the board. In other regions, they may have variants that have stand in the box, so you want to check before you buy the TV on what version you're going to get. But if you're in the US, you're definitely always going to get a wall mount in the box. Where with the Panasonic Z95B, you are always going to have this pedestal stand. So it does take up a nice size footprint, and it also will swivel. Now this is going to depend on the size that you get. If you get 77, you won't have that design. You'll have a different pedestal stand design for the Z95B, which doesn't swivel. So there's going to be some differences with that. The Panasonic Z95B is also considerably thicker when it comes down to the design of the TV. You'll see that the Panasonic Z95B's back is a little bit thicker, and it's also going to have an array of different speaker modules in the TV itself, including a subwoofer in the back, and this is going to make up a big difference when it comes down to sound quality. Where the G5 is going to be thinner, and it has a really premium look to it still with this design in mind, but because it is so thin, there is some sacrifices being made, like with the speaker, and this definitely comes through when we talk about this next part, the sound quality. You have to understand it is pretty massive. There is going to be a significant difference in sound quality between the G5 and the Z95B. The Z95B sound quality is the best that I've heard this year in TV speakers, and I definitely think a lot of people won't have to get a separate sound solution when dealing with this TV. It sounds that good. And yes, it's not going to replace a full sound system that you spend a lot of money on to upgrade your sound, but it's going to go a long way for a lot of people. Where with the G5, it's going to be pretty noticeable that the sound isn't that great on this TV, and then you'll probably at least want to get a lower end soundbar or a mid-range soundbar to compensate for this. Next up, the operating system. And in my opinion, both of these TVs kind of suffer with the operating system in mind in one way or another. With the WebOS on the LG, it definitely feels outdated and clunky. TV. Not to mention, there's a lot of menu diving that you have to do with the system, and when you have a system that sometimes is clunky, it's really hard to deal with when it comes down to navigation. I know a lot of people actually like this design with the WebOS and the mouse pointer, so I think LG has something going for it because people like it, obviously, but there's no denying that it's a slow operating system to navigate a lot of times, and it's just, in my opinion, not that great of a smart TV system, and I would definitely opt for an Apple TV or another streaming device over it. In the case of the Panasonic, you have a different situation where they do actually kind of have a dedicated streamer built into the TV with the Fire TV. Since this is an Amazon Fire TV, you will have the Fire TV interface being your main hub for your TV. And it's going to be hit or miss for a lot of people. I know I'm personally not somebody that likes the Fire TV interface. I also think this is pretty clunky. In that clicky chiclet style remote that they give you, I don't really think it's very premium, and it probably shouldn't be sold with the Z95B. I definitely think they missed the mark with the remote here. And the remote navigation for both of these TVs is pretty unfortunate as well, when you do have some bad decision making being made with both remotes in mind. For example, the LG has a volume down button and a volume up button, but to mute it, you have to hold down the volume down button. There's not a selectable mute button, and for some reason, there's not just the option to click in the mute button. You have to actually physically hold down on the mute button until it mutes. So you'll watch the volume go down on the slider, and then it will finally mute. It's a really weird way to mute the TV, and I don't like it at all. For the Z95B, it feels like the input button is at a really weird spot for that TV as well. And with the LG in mind, there really is no input button. You have to hold down one of the home buttons. And when I say one of the home buttons, there's two home buttons. This is leading into the theme of taking out input buttons on remotes. Companies need to stop doing it. Samsung started it, LG finished it, and hopefully Sony doesn't do this, or Panasonic, because we need input buttons on the remote. It just makes for an easier way to switch your input. Now, in terms of options, the Panasonic does have a lot of options, and the menu diving doesn't feel as bad as the LG G5. But if you are somebody that likes to tinker with all your different settings, especially with your HDR settings, there is a lot of different options for both TVs. Now let's move on to the most important thing, picture quality. When it comes down to looking at these two side by side, one thing is going to be clear right away with these TVs, and that is LG has a more artificial look to it. Now, whether or not you're going to like this look really depends on your style of picture preference, because that's really what it's going to boil down to with the LG G5. At times, it does feel like maybe there is a bit too much sharpening going on with the TV. Like they took what the LG G4 did, which I think was a fantastic TV, and they kind of cranked it up even more. It seems like they're trying to replicate a edge enhancement style of Sony, but they may have went overboard a little bit here, as sometimes you do see some anomalies with the picture that I just don't really unsee when I'm looking at both of these TVs side by side. But that's just me, I'm nitpicking the TVs. So you're definitely getting a little bit of an overprocessed look with the LG G5. But I think a lot of people actually are going to like this look a lot. And not to mention, there's so many different options with the LG G5 in that kind of vein where you can customize the picture to have this over exaggerated look to it more than any other TV on the market. So you are going to be able to get one of the brightest looking, most impactful pictures when it comes down to your TV, although it does sacrifice some realism and the accuracy side of things when it comes down to looking at TVs. It really depends on you. Now, the LG G5 does have a mode that follows the creator's intent pretty decently if you're into that sort of thing instead, but it's not going to be as good as the Panasonic Z95B in that department. I think the Panasonic Z95B is one of the best looking TVs out of the box, and this has been backed up by a lot of different people. So I think that when you're looking at that kind of style, it's definitely the Z95B. The HDR tone mapping on the Z95B is so good. It looks very much like a different type of TV next to the G5 at times. For some reason, I just feel like the Z95B just gives me a more impactful HDR presentation than the G5 most of the time. And I really think that overall in HDR, it was the better TV by a big margin, unless you watch in a more exaggerated picture mode. Because I have to be very clear on this next point. The Panasonic Z95B just can't do what the G5 does in the exaggerated picture modes. And what I mean by that is if you are into that picture pop where you're just throwing everything accuracy out the window in favor of an over brightened look that's going to just give you a more extravagant looking picture out of the box in every piece of content that you watch, regardless if it's highly graded content. Some people just love to push their TV to the max. If you're watching this and thinking to yourself, hey, that's me, you are definitely going to want to get the G5 over the Z95. And with the panels that I got, both TVs did struggle with shadow detail compared to the QD OLEDs, but the G5 definitely had more black crush than the Z95B. I thought I could get away with the shadow detail on the Z95B. Yes, at times it felt like it was a little crushed more than I would like, but not like the G5. The G5 definitely felt like it crushed details more often than not, and it did feel like I was losing some really important details in scenes. Okay, what about color? Well, color was pretty interesting when it came down to these two TVs, as they're both using the primary RGB Tandem OLED panel from LG Display. So the same exact panel being used here, just different algorithms and different methods that they're taking with their tone mapping when you're looking at the TVs in HDR, because that's where I saw the biggest differences. In SDR, they both looked great and I didn't have any issues at all with that. But with HDR, there was a little bit of a difference. I had them next to QD OLEDs, and when it came down to color, I would say that the Z95B came closer to matching the QD OLEDs in the high color brightness department. You could see this in a lot of different films. Both TVs did do a really good job with color in mind, and better than you have seen WOLEDs do in the past. But the Z95B does have the ability to show higher color brightness when it comes down to pushing the brightness levels of the TV, where the LG G5 does start to lose color faster than the Z95B from what I observed. But they can trade blows in this department, and it really does depend on the scene, and it depends on the tone mapping algorithm that's in place with both of these TVs. One downside that you can see with these panels is going to be the off-angle viewing. Off-angle, you are going to notice some tinting on occasion when it comes down to these TVs. Whether or not you see it or not, I think it really depends on how often you're really going to be looking for it. And maybe it does stick out like a sore thumb for some people, and maybe it doesn't stick out at all for other people. But if you're watching off angle, you can notice either a pink tint or a cyan tint. It really just depends. And I have seen both with both TVs, both the Z95B and the G5 had this off angle tinting issue. And most of the WOLED panels that I've had in the past have had this issue in some way or another. So yeah, this is not solved with the primary RGB Tandem OLED, but in the case of last year's TV, when it came down to the G4, the MLA panel did a much better job with off angle in mind. So yeah, I think that this is a step back with that into consideration, because the QD OLEDs off angle looked significantly better than the WOLEDs off angle. Just something to think about if you're going to be watching off angle at all. Alright, let's cap this off with gaming. Now, one difference that you'll notice right away is that there's 4 HDMI 2.1 ports on the LG G5, and they're all capable of 165Hz VRR gaming. So if you're a PC gamer, that's a really great thing. And if you're a PC gamer and you're looking at the Z95B, it goes up to 144Hz. So that's pretty good as well, but it's only going to be on 2 ports, while the other 2 ports on the Z95B don't have 4K 144Hz capability. In terms of how they look out of the box, I would say that the Panasonic Z95B in true game mode is one of the best looking out of the box game modes I have ever seen. And when it comes down to the traditional game modes that you're used to getting with TVs, You still have that with the Panasonic Z95B as well, where it's just going to be pushing colors and saturation up a little bit further than maybe you would want. And the LG G5 by default does have a game mode that looks like this as well. So you're going to have to do a lot of tweaking with the G5 in mind if you're somebody that likes a more accurate game mode. When it comes down to the G5 versus the Z95B in the out of the box game mode, is definitely for me going to be the Z95B. Both TVs are going to have a lot of different options with picture customization in mind for game mode as well. They both do have a game bar style overlay if that's something you like to tinker around with, but the LG G5 is going to have more options available at your disposal with this bar. And when it comes down to the actual game mode customization, there is going to be customization on both fronts for the LG G5 and the Z95B. I would say that if you like to tinker in game mode, they're both really good at that. The Panasonic Z95B, in my opinion, presented a better image overall in both SDR and HDR when it came down to game mode. The SDR was able to get brighter than the G5 if you're needing that for a bright room, and the HDR was more impactful and overall just a better look than the G5 when it came down to gaming. So I do think that the G5 just isn't as good as the Z95B in game mode when it comes down to picture quality. But if you need that extra 165 Hz support, then the G5 and the S95F are going to be your only options in that department. So those are things to weigh for game mode. I'll have a full gaming comparison of all 4 TVs in the near future, so stay tuned for that. That's coming around the corner. If you don't want to miss that, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and when it's up, I'll have that video right here. But in the meantime, you should check out this video right next to it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.